One of the most disorientating things that I've ever experienced in my entire life was when I finally had a real support system. After a lifetime of not just growing up with abuse, but then entering adulthood and being more abused, it was extremely different going from a state of nonstop depression into a state of, oh, I'm not depressed 24/7. It was extremely different going from people constantly only taking advantage of me to people having the opportunity or the option to take advantage of me and choosing not to, and saying, oh no, I'm not going to do that. There was so much foreign about being treated with kindness or encouragement. People doing that is just mind boggling. When you first encounter it and you've never encountered it before, and the thing is it's not that no one was ever nice to me ever once. It was that it was in such small doses that I thought that that was all there was for me. When I encountered the real thing, it was earth shattering. I felt like the earth started spinning in a different direction and no one told me. It started to feel like leading a different double life, because you go home and people scream at you and treat you not great and act like you're not allowed to exist. And then you go where you feel supported and people are willingly choosing to hang around with you and do silly, not that amazing things together just for the laugh. If you accomplish something, they actually cheer for you. Or if you say, oh, I'm nervous about this thing, they build you up. It's just completely different. When you have an actual support group, you get attention, and it's positive attention. And if you've spent the rest of your life only ever getting negative attention for the 98% of the time, it can be so disorientating. And that overwhelmingness you can feel embarrassed by. But man, it is very true that just because something is unknown doesn't make it dangerous or bad. There's unfortunately been a lot in my life where I thought the only way to have anyone be in my life was if I was useful enough, and I have given away ridiculous amounts of money and objects to people to try to hope that they would stay in my life, treat me nicely, and basically had to buy positive attention. And even that, it was so conditional and it was so temporary. It was essentially appreciation that I was trying to hope could turn into something more, and it didn't. When I very first was excited about getting published, for instance, I took someone out to eat, and I had to take them to somewhere pretty nice and spend hundreds of dollars for a meal so that anyone, would celebrate with me. And I just didn't want to be alone in a moment of happiness. When I go tell my actual friends that I do that, they're like, you should never have to pay anyone to hang out with you. You should never have to pay anyone to celebrate with you. The next time you want to celebrate something, call me. I'll celebrate with you for free. And I tell them why I did that I was excited because I got published, and they're all, for the next hour and a half, gushing over me of their own accord. I didn't ask them to. They just want to savor the moment with me. And there's something so significant about the difference. It feels almost surreal. Like, how can this be possible? How is this real? What is happening right now? It is good to lean into that discomfort and to embrace it anyway, even though it's terrifying. It is terrifying because you're so scared that that's going to go away. You've never had it, and now that you're starting to accept that it's real, comes the horror of what if this stops? You got to overcome that hurdle and start to try to accept that people are being real with you. Maybe, just maybe, all the people that you were clinging to so desperately before weren't really that great of people. There was a study done, and essentially the results of it was that the number one indicator that someone's grown up in an abusive or unhealthy environment is that as an adult, they exhibit one behavior, and that behavior is that they tend to be treated really poorly by someone. And I don't mean just get in an argument or, oh, you guys had a misunderstanding or someone, accidentally did something. I mean, you get treated really poorly by someone. And instead of being, oh, I don't deserve this and walk away, you try to convince them to stay, but please, I'll do anything, treat me better. And you try to adjust yourself, you try to change yourself in the hopes that they'll stay and that they'll treat you better. That's actually not a good thing. That is a sign of trauma and childhood abuse. And that doesn't mean devotion is a bad thing. Devotion is very different. Devotion is we both care so much about each other. We would never intentionally hurt each other. We would always, to the best of our ability, choose each other's well-being. Devotion is, I'm not going to abandon you and you're not going to abandon me. We are doing this together. We are in it together. We're a team. That's different. That's not the same thing. If someone is genuinely treating you like crap and you are staying and you are doing everything you can think of to try to get them to stay and hoping that someday they'll do different, you're not accepting them for who they are, and you're not accepting the situation for what it is. Healthy people don't stick around and put up with it for forever. They have a threshold and they say, okay, I'm done. I'm gonna go get treated better because I deserve to be treated better. I'm not gonna stay here and put up with this. Yeah, I've spent basically my entire life caring so much about people who didn't care about me at all. I can't think of a single mutual relationship I ever had in my whole life. The only kind of love I've ever given is unrequited, no matter what kind of relationship. I would just throw myself at people, and I would financially destroy myself for people. There's this weird, sick, twisted thing of if you prove how much you love them, if you prove how willing you are to sacrifice yourself, you martyr yourself on an altar for them, that they'll finally see how much you care and they'll care back. And that's unfortunately not true. It's sadly almost never true. In reality, if a person doesn't like you, if a person doesn't accept you, if a person doesn't treat you nice, just as you are, there's nothing you can do in the entire universe to convince them if they're not already convinced that you are of worth. If they think you're a waste of time, no matter how much you beg them, no matter how much you care, no matter what you put into it, you're not accepting that that's how they feel. And you're trying to somehow not be a waste of time to them, but it's not that you're a waste of time, period. You're just a waste of time in their mind. And there could be someone else who you wouldn't be a waste of time to. In reality, it's just that you're time consuming. You're not actually a waste of time. I wish I could have found a support system sooner. Unfortunately, it took an extremely long time for me to find supportive people to be around. I'm sure some of that has to do with how much isolation I grew up with, and I know for a fact some of that has to do with health issues and the way that I was going through life and things like that. Like, I can see very real circumstances that affected that. I can recognize childhood stuff coming into play. I can see a lot of things like that that had to do with me. And I can also see that outright some of the people that I chose to be in a relationship with were predatory. I was desperate for love, so I could tolerate being preyed upon. At a certain point, I even got comfortable being afraid of women. I just expected it. I didn't expect otherwise, so why would I pursue anything else? I got to a point where I couldn't imagine people treating me any other way. And so I didn't look for people who would treat me any other way. And I highly suggest that if you are maybe someone who's stuck Maybe there's some people that you're holding on to that you shouldn't be, that you ask yourself why you're doing that and what's going on there. Maybe you are financially hurting yourself for someone. Maybe you are emotionally hurting yourself for someone. You're thinking all the time about someone who's not thinking about you. Whatever it is, think about that for a minute, because not all people are the same. Just like trees, we have so many different kinds of trees in the world. It's not just trees, flowering trees and trees that don't flower, and we need all the different kinds of trees for the world to function. People are different. It's not just people. We have so many different personality types out there and so many different dynamics that happen between people, and it takes all of us for everything to function. There's other kinds of people out there. Maybe you haven't encountered them yet, and that's difficult, and maybe it's hard to find them. I mean, I know. Believe me, I'm aware it's hard to find them, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. But if you can't even imagine them in the first place, you're not gonna look for them. And you need to look for them, because you do deserve to be treated better. The overwhelm, it gradually turns into more and more trust. At first, you're really like, oh, they're gonna change their minds at any minute. Oh, these people are gonna step away at some point. Oh, I should prepare myself for when they drop me, that they're gonna leave. And not everyone leaves. There's a lot of relationships that are temporary, especially friendships. In life, you kind of move on to other things and get different interests. Sometimes people are just your people. You meet them and they meet you, and some part of you recognizes each other. You just get along. And you're like, hey, I've never had this before. And they're like, I've never had this before either. And you just get along. You don't have to walk on eggshells worried about you guys getting in a fight. You don't have to be terrified you're constantly doing the wrong thing, or that you're always the problem in every situation. They just seem to like to be around you, and you genuinely like to be around them. Even if it is hard to find that, even if it does take a long time to find that, even if once you find that, it is kind of a hurdle to get used to that, to trust that, it's still incredibly worth it. Don't give up on a good thing just because of all of the barriers and all of the difficulties. It will be worth it. Having a support system, having people in your life who actually treat you decent, completely changes your whole world.